Hi, Wes. Thank you so much for being our guest speaker this month. Angus and I are really excited to have this conversation with you. And it just was lighting up my day knowing that we were going to be speaking. So I'm looking forward to it.
Rohini and Angus. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you go. Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say I'm already excited, and I've only had a brief interaction with you, and you already seem like an incredible force of nature. All the things that you're doing in this world, it's awesome. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, you guys, the pleasure is mine. I'm with the Rewilders.
Yes.
All right.
How you get that opportunity? But like, I've known Rohini for so long, and so every time I get to reconnect with her, and whatever she's doing is amazing. But you guys, I'll say thank you for letting me be on here, and you guys are a force of nature as well in everything that you're doing, and so I feel honored, and it feels organic and beautiful.
Thank you. And you're a newly minted doctor, Dr. Weston Robbins.
It's so fun, man. All the young people that I work with at the center, I kept joking with them, and they come in and I was like, can you tell anything different about me? Do I look any different? And they were like, I don't know, dude, another tattoo. And I was like, I'm a doctor now. Can't you tell? I've become that much more arrogant and pretentious.
And I think Doc West has a nice ring to it too.
Okay.
West.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to reference some of your bio here. You're the founder, president, and CEO of Eternal Strength, which is a center for radical youth work. And you're also a professor at the University of Western Georgia. And there's another university that you may be working at too. And that I loved what you said when we were just before we started the recording about how you like to have that kind of balance in your life. So you do the supervision, you do the teaching, and you do the work with the youth as well, which is fantastic. And so we'll include the links for your center so that people can learn more about your work there. And we're going to absolutely be wanting to learn more about it for the two of us as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I also want to reference that we have known each other for a really long time. Wes and I met when I was working at Vive, which was a program that helped families with teens and young adults who were struggling. And that was really where I got my hours to become a licensed therapist, where I stepped into a leadership role in terms of running a company. So it was a huge learning curve, I think, for all of us at that time, Wes, but it was amazing the work that we were doing. And you were absolutely one of the most incredible workers with the young people, one of the most incredible mentors. And so it doesn't surprise me that you've taken what you started there and created this amazing center of your own, doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, Rohini, I feel like you and I will just compliment each other the whole time.
Yeah, we have to move on.
I'll be like, hey, let me tell you how incredible your wife is.
Okay.
But it goes right back to that. Like that was, my heart was always in youth work. And I felt like it just felt natural. Felt really organic. And I met so many other clinicians and counselors where it didn't for them. I felt very intimidated and didn't know how to maneuver it. And that was a population for me where even beyond being a therapist, I just could connect, whether it was music, art, talking organically, building relationship, true humanistic connection. And so when I found Vive, I felt like that, how they approach the work, the person-centered heart and spirit, but then there was so many unique people at the organization. And Rohini, I remember every time I get on the phone with you, you just be of such balance and poise and could give guidance. And it made me feel really grounded. Like I had these people of support all around. And every time you drop these like wisdom nuggets of just like awesome stuff that I carry with me and would use. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for that time because it's where I cut my teeth being a clinician and finding my voice relationally and doing work. Yeah.
No,
I was her line writer, by the way. The wisdom nuggets. That's all me.
It was all scripted.
No, not at all. She's full of wisdom
But
nuggets.
you remember those days, Angus,
I
those
do.
5
I do
days.
remember those 5 days. It seemed like you had a really beautiful family. It
Yeah, it
seemed,
was but it
separate
was
from ours.
separate, but we were on call 24/7. Like that's
Right,
what brought
yeah.
us together, I think, was the intensity of the work too, that we were really there to support each other, navigating that with all of the families. It was amazing, a wonderful experience.
Yeah, you're often, there would be an emergency. I have to disappear into another room, and wouldn't see her couldn't see her for the rest of the night.
I'd be like,
It
Wes,
was.
coming downstairs.
It was a lot of that here. I'm moving, so that's
Yeah,
better.
all
Cool.
good.
There was a crazy light behind me.
Yeah.
It was good, but yeah, it was like funky.
Yeah.
It was a lot of crisis work with those families, and I remember that. And it was where I had to kind of learn boundaries and how to maneuver stuff. I remember one time I was working with this young kid, and it was me, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and a couple other friends, and we were at a concert at the Masquerade in Atlanta.
Mm.
And I got a call from a 17-year-old kid I was working with, and he ran away from home, and we built a ton of relationship, and I just left the concert and spent like 3 hours on the phone with him outside. And my friends were like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "This is the work." And I felt honored and privileged to do it. But as I grew as a clinician, I started to recognize true crises work, and what was in the greatest good and the best interest of the client and the family sometimes wasn't.
Yeah.
Tons of process in those moments, and was holding firmer boundaries.
Yeah, that's all part of the learning curve.
Yeah.
So Wes, I'd love for you to speak more about what you see radical youth work to be, and just start there and see where that goes, if you're open to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll just turn it over to you and see where we go.
So it's interesting. I think about this journey that I had where I did all the work at Vive. I became clinical team leader. I started a PhD program in 2014 that was at the University of West Georgia, Consciousness and Society. Really beautiful, eclectic, humanistic, transpersonal, critical psychologies, really unique. And I got accepted into that, thought I could do both. There was absolutely no way. The academic rigor was just through the roof. And so that's when I made the leap and went into private practice. And in doing that youth work, I feel like a lot of this has been guided with synchronicities, like Jung talks about, where it's like, I was so in the weeds that I could not see it. But now as I scale back and I reflect, I can see all the meta connections. So my committee at university was Dr. Hans Scott Meyer and Dr. Kathy Scott Meyer, a married couple. And initially, I approached Kathy to be my chair for my dissertation. And my dissertation was what's called an autoethnography, a qualitative methodology and a cultural study, which I chose addiction. But I took my own lived experience of addiction and wove it into theory and research about addiction. And I approached Kathy because she was like the queen of autoethnography. And she introduced that methodology to me, and I was like, okay, great. This is what I'm going to do for my dissertation. Little did I know that her and her husband, Hans, had done quite a bit of work in the youth services field for years.
Right.
They had written on this term, radical youth work.
And
so if you go Google radical youth work, you're primarily going to get Dr. Kathy Scott Meyer and Dr. Hans Scott Meyer's theory and research about what that is. And the two identifying components that I align with the most are mutual liberation. So the youth worker and the young person are mutually being set free and liberated and growing and healing together. And then a flattening of the developmental hierarchy. So in most youth work, there is some type of hierarchy that exists where the young person is being told behaviorally what they need to do, where they need to go, the choices they need to make. And it's that dynamic of the clinical professional being here and the young person being here. And we are truly going to join with this young person on their journey to give them voice, empowerment, a sacred space, and to heal together. And so the whole time I was doing this youth work, that's what I was doing organically.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to pull in more of their theory and more of their unique articulation and verbiage that was describing the work that I was doing from a heart-centered place.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started the center, you guys, has been like, oh my God, my mental health has probably been the worst. I joke with clients, I'm like, I created a place to take care of young people's mental health, and I severely wounded my own mental health over the years. But like, I'm at the other end of it. It's just been wild growth. And it was
sure.
everything that I was ever scared of, I've
Mm-hmm.
endured in the last 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Financially, emotionally, psychologically, leading a team, having people needing to get terminated, hiring people, people quitting, building a culture, interpersonal relationships. The formation of everything is stuff that I was very fearful of.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been through all of it. And
Wow.
so in my private practice, it was just families that I continued to see, similar to the work at Vive, that they'd been through this mental health continuum of an intensive outpatient program, a partial hospitalization program, a wilderness therapy, a residential, a therapeutic boarding school, back home, private practice, cycle. Family would spend upwards of $350,000 to $400,000 on a continuum of care of therapeutic services. And after the end of 2 years, the kid would be back home, continuing to struggle with self-harm, addiction, substance abuse, suicidality. And so families started to ask me, do you have anything more than once a week private practice? Are you ever going to do groups? Are you ever going to join with other clinicians? I was really fulfilled in private practice, but I could not sit there any longer and continue to see the same pattern. And that's where I started to ask these young people and these families, if you could go anywhere you wanted and do healing work the way that you wanted to do it, what would that space look like? And we would literally get out a sheet of paper and draw eternal strength. So like skateboard ramp, music arena, ceramic studio, art arena, I would let them dream. And that would kind of become our session, is like, okay, what would the coolest therapy place look like on earth? And do you guys remember that show, Rob and Big, Rob Dyrdek, Fantasy Factory?
No.
It was an MTV show.
Yeah.
And he created this place called the Fantasy Factory. And it was this giant warehouse with like a huge ball pit and like the thing where you could like shoot tennis balls. It was just this giant fun house.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, something like that in combination with really unique light workers and healers and counseling and psychotherapy. So that to me, that's what pushed the opening of the center. And I could talk forever about finding the 8,500 square foot building that my wife found, taking the leap we got the building in March 2020. We opened the doors April 2020. COVID hit.
Of course.
It didn't slow us down. We still had families that were like, hey, we're struggling so much. We had an outdoor space. We could wear masks. We could separate. And then it's just grown organically. And it is my life's work. And so everything, probably to an unhealthy extent, is devoted to that. And I'm 40 and I'm working on pulling back and bringing in some balance into my life. But that will forever be my life's work, is to truly build a space for young people that they feel seen, they feel heard, and that they want to be at.
Yeah.
And that to me is the coolest thing. We got like 72 families we're serving right now. And every young person walks in those doors and wants to be at eternal strength, wants to do therapy the way we're doing it, wants to do the mentoring work, wants to be part of our community. And that I knew that could exist. I just got so infuriated that it didn't, that I went and built it. And the growth of it, I have many different plans for, but I'm trying to slow down and be as balanced and strategic, patient as I can in the slow organic growth of it, because nothing would harm it more than an expedited growth in a way that makes it lose its heart, which I would never allow.
Yeah. I want to come.
I know, it sounds
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. So I'd love, and again, I don't know what you can or can't share, but I'd love for you to share some of the experiences that you've had with clients on their journey, if you're open to that, if there's things that you can share that you have permission to, because I think that's one of the best ways to give people a feel of what the work looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. God, I'll get emotional if I think about that, Rohini, because I'm so just filled with gratitude. Like I feel like I've been, and I know it sounds fucking corny and cliche to say, like, I'm a vessel. I'm merely here, like, but I really feel like I've been put on this planet to, I do that and I do it well, to hold sacred space. I wouldn't
Mhm.
consider myself a healer. I don't think I'm healing anybody, but I do think
Mhm.
by giving sacred space, process, insight, awareness, that it's meaningful. And so when I think about these young people who have saved my life
Mm.
that I've worked with, they've shaped how I see myself. And that to me is the truest definition of radical youth work.
Mhm.
It's mutually liberating, where I'm like, I'm lost if I'm not getting the insights and awareness that I need from being around these young people as they go on that journey. They teach me, they bring
Mhm.
me so much wisdom and knowledge and insight about myself when
Mm.
I'm in therapeutic relationship with them. But primarily, I mean, I have very strong opinions about the field of psychology, the field of psychiatry, the DSM, diagnoses, clinical psychology. I see each human soul that walks in the center and that I work with as a unique beacon of light. And it's about finding out what opens their heart, what tunes them into the truest version of themselves, and getting them aligned with that in whatever way that needs to happen. And then you start to watch these really severe challenges that they may maneuver lessen. So
Mm.
whether it's severe anxiety, depression, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, grief, loss, guilt, shame, tons of self-harm, cutting, self-injury, suicide attempts, drug addiction, drug abuse, um, all the ways that we hurt and harm ourselves to try and run away from pain,
Mhm.
and giving them the ability to be able to turn towards their pain, sit with it and look at it and start to maneuver through it has been one of the greatest gifts that I've ever been able to witness in my life. And I truly believe that that's intrinsically linked to my own ability to look at my own pain. And so I go to all the growth, depth oriented psychotherapeutic work that I've done I've had 5 different therapists. Each have been unique in their approach and what I've gained from doing work with them. And that's given me the ability to sit with my own anxiety, pain, neuroses, addiction, learn about myself at a depth level. And then I feel comfortable taking somebody else there and sitting with them and giving them that space. But I can think of so many detailed examples of, like, I don't know, man, I could overthink it. I'll just say this. I think there's many words and verbiage and lenses that you could use to describe it. I know when I went and did a spirit quest in Peru in 2016, and I had a very profound kind of cathartic awakening there, where I was in ceremony and I remember I was crying and I was in communion, kind of asking questions. And I was like, what am I even doing? Am I even
Mm.
fucking helping anybody?
Mhm.
What am I doing? What do I need to do differently? How can I do this better? And I got hit with this heartfelt moment of, just show up and be there. Your presence alone is healing.
Mm.
And I was like, and it sounds a little bit ego, where I'm like, oh, cool. Now I'm the guy that just needs to show up and sit in the room. and my presence can heal you. Like, what the fuck is that? But, but it gave me solace in my heart. In my heart, I immediately went to, yeah, okay, that feels right. I can stop worrying so much about a methodology
Mm-hmm.
or an approach or what I need to say to this kid or trying to stop a certain behavior. I can just show up and carve sacred space.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I keep doing that, that's all I really can do. And Ram Dass speaks about it beautifully. He says, he uses an ecological analogy where he says, if we're each our own kind of ecological environment, you care for yours well enough that when somebody gets close to it, they have the ability to heal if they so choose.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not there, then you leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
You don't proselytize to them. You don't try and change them or change their journey. You just work on yourself enough that your own life becomes the model and the catalyst for what could be for their growth. That's how you teach other people. You put your money where your mouth is. Like, you do your own, you do this shit. You are it. You embody it. Your life is your message, you know? And then he also says, wherever I don't bring love and compassion in my life, that's where my work resides. That's what I need to look at. So all this funky stuff, but like the kids are my heart. Like any of those young people that come in, that's where I'm immediately like, how do we make you feel safe? And how do you get to have voice in here? And that's the shit that's easy for me, Rohini and Angus, is I can just be like, what are you jamming to? What music do you like? A couple young people have come in and been like super resistant. And the parents are like, there's no way they're going to come into this center. I remember we had one young guy that when he wasn't leaving his house for months, super agoraphobic. Parents couldn't get him to go to school. He was being resistant, but he was an insanely talented guitarist. And we have a music studio there. And so he came in and it took him about 20 minutes to get out of the car. So parents came in first and they were like, let's go check on him. I said, do I need to go out there? They were like, no, let me try again. And then they finally got him in and he was sitting there on the couch in the waiting room. And I said, dude, don't say shit. You just go jam. And he was like, okay. And then we just went into the music room and picked up instruments. And I was like, I don't want you to even fucking talk. Like, let's just jam out. And he started playing and I started playing. And then it opened a space. And I think so many young people have been through so many therapeutic spaces that are clinical, that are much more strategic. And I've met many seasoned clinicians that are very talented at what they do. And I love the field and I support it in many ways, but young people are not resonating with it. And so I think when they come into Eternal Strength, they're shocked that we're not busting out a Likert scale and trying to talk about the last times that they self-harmed or what their anxiety is on a scale of 1 to 10, or can they do, breath work with us. We're genuinely like, let's play. What are you into? What do you like? What brings you joy in your life? Let's get to know one another before we dive into that. And then letting them lead therapeutically is really important.
Yeah. I mean, it's, talking about that insight that you had in Peru and then seeing when we recognize that people, youth, adults, humans have that light within them, then really what is there to do in a sense, other than, as you're saying, shine that light from ourselves, which shows a beacon, hey, this is possible, but no pressure. And the focus on just being able to get out of your head and have some fun and not get into the analysis and the neuroses that we're all often caught up in, to get into the present moment that way. It just sounds amazing. And then, of course, naturally, we drop into that space of knowing who we are as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I think we can weave in between both, but I think so much of what happens in a therapeutic container is we're unconscious to it.
Yeah.
And like we can use language for it, but you feel when you feel safe. And when
Mhm.
you walk in somewhere and you start to share things and you feel vulnerable and you feel transparent, there's such beautiful inherent healing in that. And I think that's what all the greats knew. You know what I mean? Whether it was like
Mhm.
Freud or Jung or the analyst, they knew that there was a cathartic something that happened when you began to do talk therapy and you began
Mm.
to open up. And so, how do we do that in a way that young people are interested in and feel like is genuine and authentic?
Mhm.
I think about beautiful moments, and a lot of times certain movies will get it right. Like, do you guys
Mm.
remember the Robin Williams movie, The Fisher
Yes.
King?
Yes.
And he's laying there in the grass with Jeff Bridges and just telling the story of the Fisher King.
Mm.
And like, there's so many times where it's like two people laying beside one another, looking
Mhm.
up at the stars, or and so like even doing that, man, there's times where I've gotten weird up at the center and just like laid down, and then a client will join me and lay down beside me or whatever it is, to bring authenticity and connection and to have true moments with other people. I think our soul and our heart feels that, and that's has this healing energy with it where you just feel connected and heard and seen. And that's the thing, like, does somebody really fucking see you and
Mm.
understand what you're saying? When you feel that truly, that's probably the best feeling in the world, and that's probably a catalyst for feeling able to grow and move and
Mhm.
expand. Is like, this person sees me and has full acceptance of me, even in all of my flaws and everything I'm dealing with. I'm not alone. I'm not isolated. They understand it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, my goodness, I'm having so many thoughts and probably going to have so many questions. But I think that thing that really resonates with me is this sense that people, not just kids, but youths and adults as well, because I do work in treatment centers as well. Is I feel like so many of the people that you come up against or come up across, let's say, it feels like they're restrained from what I would say is their essential nature, that life force that lives within them. And I think that a big part of that journey to sort of recalibrate themselves back in alignment with that life force is kind of about being in a safe container where, I feel like over whatever period of time, they build up a resistance to even allow themselves to experience that, to keep themselves safe. And I love this idea that, you kind of allow those youths to just sort of dream, just to sort of kick things off on that level, to sort of really allow them to sort of come back. It seems like it's an incredible recalibration. And then this intention to sort of come into this space where we're all here to learn together. We're all here to have we're all here to have an insight together as human beings. I mean, that's phenomenal. Like, where in the world is that really being done to any kind of great degree? And that has to be the place to start. It is a very level playing field as I see it. When I talk about, and it reminds me of kind of how I've talked about being a coach in the past, and I want to say this again, is that, as a coach, I feel like my role is just to kind of be like this kid at a school who's been there for a while. A new kid arrives, and I'm going to take them into the classroom to sort of show them around. But once we're in the classroom, we're all there to learn together. And I think that must be so empowering to a youth to hear that from an adult, that probably for most of their life, the adult world has been like, probably felt very suppressing and probably going against their essential nature that it is to express themselves. I think what you're doing is just remarkable and beautiful and amazing.
Angus, thank you. And your words, as you were talking, and you said it, a recalibration. I think a lot of times one of our taglines, if you want to call it that we've come to organically, has been to rehumanize. And I think
Mm.
there's been so much dehumanization in
Mhm.
psychology and in
Mm.
Western counseling, where it's been overly pathologizing. And you have hundreds of young clinicians who are getting into a healing profession and want to help, and their hearts are already there. They're like, I want to go get my master's in counseling because I want to be a catalyst for change and I want to help people heal. And a lot of times they are the walking wounded. These beautiful
Mm.
warriors that have dealt with their own wounds and done their own healing work. And I tell young clinicians, if you really want to help others, you do your own work, because that is one of the greatest catalysts you could ever have, is sitting in front of another and have done massive amounts of depth work. But I love what you're saying, where it's like, in these organizations, in these institutions, you feel it. There's a wall that's already up with their clinicians, with certain policies and procedures, with how they maneuver things. And I think young people can feel that better than anybody. And they're just waiting for somebody to really connect. And that's where sometimes you see the cliche shit, like the young kid who's in the treatment center and who's in therapy and meeting with the psychiatrist and the psychologist and going to group. And then like on a 30-minute break outside, they talk to the old janitor who's like pushing the mop and is like, well, let me tell you something, kid. When I grew, and tells like one fucking 10-minute story, and they're like, my whole healing, the reason I didn't kill myself is because the janitor fucking talking. Wow. But it's like, I don't think it's that it was the janitor. I think it's that a space was curated, that they felt the rawness and the realness of this person isn't trying to change me. They're not attempting to do this because it's merely their job. They really do care. And they're trying their best to give me some insight and some guidance, but they recognize I have complete autonomy, and they're going to be okay whether I choose that path or not. And so everything you just said, I feel insanely fortunate that we have the team that we have. Like you guys, at no point in time with my current crew have I had to sit and train them in what radical youth work or person-centered and humanistic counseling is. They get it, they know it, and they align with it. And they would quit if we weren't doing that. If all of a sudden it's just who they are in their heart, they'd be like, yeah, I'm not feeling that. I don't want to do it like that. And so I just feel so fortunate that, again, it feels like another synchronicity, another alignment where I've just built this space. The right people have shown up, and we are all collectively curating a space for young people to be free and to open up and to rehumanize and reconnect with themselves in a way that feels authentic. So yeah, everything you just said, Angus, I'm like, I wish I could take credit for it, but it feels like something. There's this recent song I've been listening to by this group, Rising Appalachia, and it's these two sisters, and the lyric is, I've been working on a building for us all. And like, that's what I just feel like, and I'll get heavy emotional thinking about that, but it's just been this insane push, almost this addiction of like, I'm going to build this space. The right people will come. The right families will show up that need the healing work in the way they need it, but I'm just going to continue to work on building and growing this space and what it represents. Eternal strength, radical youth work, mutual liberation, rehumanizing. Our mission statement is basically tattooed on our hearts in how we walk through the world. It's not, us sitting together in a boardroom going, how's this sound? What are the kids into nowadays? Let's figure out. It's like all of us are just like, we feel it, and we want to do this work, and it feeds our souls. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the parents. How are they responding to the work that the radical youth work?
Yeah. The parents. I love the parents, man. And I've been so fortunate because I've had, my daughters are 9 and 6. And so when I started this work as a clinician, I wasn't a parent. And, it's funny the way I kind of look at it is the parents were always the pain in the ass. I'd be like, the parents, nothing's wrong with this kid. The parents just need to do all this work, was my early naive viewpoint. And then I started to gain so much empathy and compassion for these parents and what they were maneuvering and enduring. And I would watch that really changed for me. It changed for me some at Vive, but in private practice, I was just story after story of parents spending so much money in the mental health
Mhm.
industry and being
Mhm.
so lost and in such desperation and looking to clinical professionals to go, please help my kid. What do I do? My family is falling apart. We'll do whatever the best of the best is. And these are really intelligent people. But when you get into the mental health field, and it can be very alluring and deceiving in certain ways. Certain journal articles and cognitive neuroscience, and we're always looking for an elixir that's going to be the healing of everything. And these parents, from a place of desperation, will be like, I'd work with parents for like 6 months or a year, and they'd be like, hey, we just read about DBT. Do you think that DBT could be the thing that Scott needs? And I'd be like, you guys, we've kind of been doing DBT for 3 months. Let me tell you what DBT is, and this, and yes, that could potentially help. So I don't know, my heart and my empathy and my compassion has grown for the parents. They have shown up and trusted us in such a way. And everything for me, Rohini and Angus, was about how do we provide families with the ethical care that they need therapeutically for where they are right here. And so everything we do is month to month. And from a business standpoint, it's ridiculous. Like we have 70 different families on 70 different unique curated engagements for each family. And like they're, like business guys would come in and be like, this is crazy. Why don't you just do package 1, package 2, package 3 and make all your families fit this program? And I'd be like, shut up. We can't do it that way. We have to do it like this. We have to sit with each family and each kid, and we have to say, what level of care do you need right now? What level of parent support do you need right now? And let's do that for a month. And then let's get to the end of that month and course correct and look at what does the next month need to look like.
Mhm.
And so parents have been very receptive to that, very
Mhm.
appreciative of that, and our ability to be a la carte and curate. And so if parents need support, they can add on to it. That's been beautiful. And our next step is we really want to wrap around these parents and create a community of support. So we've gotten tremendous feedback from them where they're hungry for that. They want more parent empowerment groups. They want more connection. They want parent psych ed groups. And we're just working on growing that organically in the ways that we can. But yeah, just my heart grows and expands more and more as I step into my own journey of parenting. And Rohini, I know you went through that as well while you were at Vive. And I remember had this beautiful moment where you shared with everybody on the team kind of the direction you needed to go with your own prioritizing your own family system. And so I think as I grow as a parent with my own girls, I see every family that I sit with, I see the parents in a different light. I have a real appreciation and understanding of everything that they're enduring and maneuvering with trying to parent a young person on the radical pilgrimage of growth who's going through all those different things. And it makes me just want to dive in more and build more relationship with that family. And but yeah, I recently got an opportunity to speak with Dr. Shafali, and all of her work has been so incredible. Conscious parenting, the awakened family, pushing parents to do their own work, but to do it in a way where they don't feel guilty or shameful or self-blaming, but to do it in a way where you can say, this is one of the toughest journeys that you have ever been on. How can you look at yourself, see what it's bringing up for you? What depth work can you do on yourself? And moving them away from trying to behaviorally shift their kid or try and control things that are out of their control and moving into things that they do have tangible control over has become my life's work as well. Just trying to help them and give them the resources they need in a way where they feel held and contained, and then delivering really hard truths and being like, you know, you can't control this. Your kid has ultimate free will. But here are the things that you can do as a parent that are in the best interest and the greatest good of your child as they go through growth. Yeah. That was my weird ramble to say, yeah, they're
No, I
taking
love
it
it.
good.
They're taking it good. That's good. And how did you end up? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I get stuff all the time, but I have forever because I keep getting more tattoos and I look wilder and wilder. The Rewilders. I'm on the Rewild. But I had the best. It's always these awesome compliments where, like, I had a grandmother come up. We had an art show the other day and she met me up in the hallway, and her daughter's been coming to the center for like probably 6 months and we haven't met yet. And she was like, "You're Wes." And I was like, "Yep." And she was like, "Well, I have to tell you, about 2 years ago, we got your name and I looked you up and I immediately saw you. And I said, anywhere but there. We will go anywhere, but not to him." And she said, "I was so stupid. We should have come here 2 years ago." And she said, "I judged you on your looks. The stuff that you guys had on your website was a little bit fringe and out there, and I just didn't resonate with." And so there's been this beautiful way, and, you know, marketing people have always been like, you got to market to the parents more. And I'm just like, fuck that. I'm sorry, but I'm like, the right people will show up. We're going to wear our hearts on our sleeves. And when these young people feel empowered and they're doing the work the way they want to do, I think the parents are starting to see the center as a place for them as well. And they're connecting relationally with us as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm curious, how did you end up connecting with Dr. Shefali?
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah, tell me. I want to hear that connection.
It was, so there's a friend of mine, Brenda Zane, who runs the Stream community, and she's put together this awesome organization for moms that have sons or daughters that have dealt with addiction. And she's built this incredible platform online. I think there's 180 women from across the nation that are part of the Stream community. They do all online stuff. There's this beautiful engagement that they can have, and then they do quarterly kind of retreats where they get together in person. But I came on her podcast a long time ago. Then she came on Eternal Strength, and we follow each other. And here recently she had on Dr. Gabor Mate. And I was like, damn. I was driving with Allison, my wife, and I was like, how the hell did you get Dr. Gabor Mate on there? I'm going to message Brenda right now. And I was like, Brenda, how did you get to talk to Dr. Gabor Mate? And she was like, Wes, it was so crazy. His people actually reached out to me. And I was like, no way, that's awesome. And I said, I'm going to try and reach out to him. I'd love to have him on all my work in addiction. I love what he does. That would be phenomenal to just be able to speak with him and have him on. And so I reached out, got on his website, reached out, and they came back and they said, unfortunately, he's not doing any more podcasts. And so then I was driving with Allison in the truck, and I was like, man, if I could have anybody on the Eternal Strength podcast, who would it be? And then I was like, Dr. Shefali, because I bought her work, The Conscious Parent. I handed that out to parents that I worked with. I sent her videos all the time. Like, she was really an integral part of somebody that I could turn the parents to. And I knew all of it was positive and moving them in a good direction. So I reached out, emailed her contact us page, said, I run Eternal Strength. Love to have you on the podcast. And that day, her assistant came back and was like, sure, she's got 2 available spots this day and this day. And I was
amazing.
Like, I was like, surely they got this wrong. They think I'm somebody that I'm not. So that happened. And then we get on the podcast, and it was awesome. It was a really intense day too, because that was the day that I had to terminate my good buddy who's no longer with Eternal Strength. And I had to do that later that day. And I was doing that podcast, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But I got on with her. We had an amazing podcast. And then I went to speak at a high school. And I remember I got done. I spoke at the PTA meeting, met all these moms, got in my car, and I looked at my phone, and I had a direct email from Dr. Shefali that was like, I also want you to hop on stage at the Evolve conference and speak for 5 minutes. And I was like, now I know they've mixed me up with somebody. So it was just, I think it was because she was doing her Evolve conference in Atlanta.
Mm.
And the part that connected it was the center was here in Atlanta, and she wanted to be able to promote that. But then I know it was the other stuff of we really connected on the podcast, and so that just happened. So
Amazing. I
yes,
love the synchronicity, how all of that just flows in life.
Mm.
And it's such a good reminder for people to just try. You never know what's going to happen.
absolutely.
And if you get a no,
Absolutely.
don't stop there, right? You didn't stop with Gabor Mate and you just went on. What else?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
And that persistence, I can remember, that's always been something that I've been willing to kind of risk and just put out there. Like, do you guys remember the band Dog's Eye View?
Mm.
No.
They were like a little 90s band, and they had this really popular song, Everything Falls Apart. And
I
it
don't
came
know it.
out like
I
around.
think I do know that song.
You
Yeah.
do?
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe I was like 13, and it came out, and I wrote the lead singer a letter.
No way.
And I came home one day from high school, I think it was like freshman year, and I got a phone call. And I was like, hey, hello. And the guy was like, hey, is this Wes? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, hey, this is Peter Stewart, the lead singer of Dog's Eye View. And I said, very funny, dude. And I hung up.
No.
But I swear, I thought it was one of my friends goofing around, and it called back. And I said, hey, and he was like, I'm serious. This is Peter Stewart from Dog's Eye View. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, man, I got your letter. That's really awesome. I think I wrote because they were only playing 18 and over shows, and I wanted to know when they were going to play an all ages show. And he said, hey, man, sorry, we've been playing all these 18 and over. We'll try and play one, but I really appreciate you being a fan and reaching out. And we talked for a second, and then it was like, that happened. And then the reason I named the center Eternal Strength is because Ben Harper, my favorite musician of all time, I met him when I was 16, and I wrote him a handwritten letter, and he wrote me back 3 months later and signed it Eternal Strength.
Oh,
Wow.
So like yes,
Yeah.
to your point, Rohini, throw it to the universe and keep putting it out there, because you never know what connections, and you just can't be afraid or second guess yourself.
Yeah. I love it. So we have some practitioners that are part of our community, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about you. You know, you left Five, you went into your private practice. You probably had some clients already, but what kind of ways do you support young clinicians that are, you know, like, how on earth do I even start a practice? I don't know how to market myself. Like, what do you say to them? I'm curious.
Yeah, my journey, I think about that a lot. And I can only speak from my own kind of lived experience, but what was incredibly valuable to me was finding mentors.
Mm.
And so I know at one point I was had my master's and applied for my associate level, licensed associate professional counselor. LAPC is what they call it in Georgia. And every state has their own associate and then full licensure.
Mm-hmm.
But it was when I was working at Vive, and I needed a supervisor and a director for my hours.
Mm-hmm.
And my hours at Vive counted, but Willow, who was my supervisor, because she wasn't in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't allow her to count as my supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what are you talking about? I do supervision with her an hour a week on the phone. She knows all the clients and families I'm working with, and they were like, nope, she's California or Colorado licensure. Mm-hmm. She can't do it. You have to find a supervisor in Georgia. And at the time I was like, man, what a pain in the ass. And I got to pay out of pocket for it. I was like, this is ridiculous. I found a clinical neuropsychologist named Dr. Damon Logsden, and he was actually the therapist to one of the Vive families.
I knew I recognized that name.
Yeah, he had done some of the testing and worked with one of the young clients that I was working with. So the young client brought me to session with him one day. He was like, can I bring my mentor from Vive to my neuropsychologist appointment? And so I met Damon, and I just decided again to approach him. And I said, hey, I need a supervisor for my licensure hours. Do you ever do that for clinicians? He agreed. brought me on, and we were able to do some sliding scale. And so it was cost affordable for me at the time as a young clinician. And you guys, he's coming to my graduation. This is like however many years ago. This is like 2010. So we're talking about, what is that, 12 years?
12 years, yeah.
This man was the one that helped me start my private practice. And so my first supervisor, now I can see it all. It's kind of like scaling back again and looking at the connections. The thing that I thought that was a pain in my ass, that I was having to go find a supervisor, pay out of pocket, became one of my greatest mentors, who was able to have me build my private practice, curate my success, my career growth. I owe so much to him. And not only did I find, so then he could only do a year of my supervision because Georgia has all these requirements, and he was a clinical neuropsychologist, and you have to have at least 2 years with an LPC, whatever licensure you're pursuing. So then once again, I did a year with him, and I was like, what a pain in the ass. Now I got to go find another supervisor. I wish I could just do all 3 years with him, right?
Yeah.
And so then I look in the back of the LPCGA. And so each licensure place in states, they kind of have newsletters. And I found the one in Georgia, and there was a group supervision with 2 guys, David McLeod and Phil Foster. And David McLeod described himself as cognitive behavioral, solution focused, and something else. And then Phil described himself. He had a master's in divinity and a master's in counseling, and he was psycho-spiritual, archetypal, and mytho-poetical or mytho-poetic. I don't know. But I was immediately intrigued. And I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Let me go apply for this 2-year-long group supervision. So I go, I interview with them. I still remember when Phil came out of the office. He had this giant Gandalf white beard. And I was like, this dude looks awesome. But then I interview with both of them, and they say, Wes, we think you'd be a great fit for our group supervision. There's one requirement. We need you to be in your own individual psychotherapy. And I'm like, what is going on? Now I got to go. And it was so funny, the resistance I put to it, because I was like, here I am wanting to become a therapist and bitching and moaning about having to go do my own therapy. I'm not trying to go do therapy. I'm just trying to be a therapist. But that journey put me in touch. I went and I interviewed a couple different therapists, and I found Dr. Joanne Peeler. My whole ramble is to say, this was a rich network of mentors, colleagues, healers, and professional therapists that have been part of my family and have shown up in so many ways in my life that I couldn't begin to describe how priceless they have been. And so for any young clinician that is trying to grow their private practice, I would say community and network. Finding people that can be mentors that you can either gain supervision from and pay them for that supervision and for their expertise and their time, or to consult with them. But if you can build that network, that was my everything for private practice. Sitting with Damon, he was like, okay, you know, I think you could start your private practice. I would charge this rate initially. I want you to operate under my liability. You can, you know, use my licensure right now, have your private practice. And then he helped me grow it. He would show me parts of his private practice, creating an LLC, paying himself, getting a payroll going, doing taxes, getting a CPA. Like all of these things came from a relationship with a mentor that was a supervisor and a guide. And now I think about all the interwoven tapestry and connections that have happened. Phil Foster became my therapist for a little bit. At one point, I did prep work with him before I went to Peru. And after integration work, when I came back, he came out about 6 months ago and did some ceremonial ritualistic healing for our team at the center, and got to see the center. And then Joanne Peeler, one of my first therapists, just had me on WRFG which is a radio station in Atlanta that's a community-based radio station. She's a co-host for a psychology show called On Your Mind. She had me on and then asked me to come on as a co-host. And so now I'm part of her and 5 other psychologists co-hosting this radio show. And so for me, it's always been relationship, connection, respect, and reverence for the other, not from what you can get from them, but how you guys can help one another in mutual growth. And I even look at this right now, Rohini, like you and I being on here with Angus and what you guys are doing, all this comes from relationship. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking we want to come to Georgia and meet your team.
Sure.
I think
Sounds
that
amazing.
sounds like a great time. Meet the rest of your team you're working with at Eternal Strength.
We would love to have y'all, and we
Yeah.
can set it up where you can meet the whole team. It's funny, every time I envision it, we have these stains on the carpet right now. And I keep, so as soon as you guys say that, I'm like, I gotta get the carpets clean. That's the first thought that I had.
That's hilarious.
Okay, yeah, you come to Georgia, let me make sure I clean the carpets.
You need to get yourself a spiritually based janitor.
Yeah, I know, right? Yes, that would be awesome, man.
Oh. Anything else, Angus?
No, this has been wonderful. I mean, I hope we can get to do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want
I
to
would
be in
love
your
to.
sphere.
Awesome. And you guys, I'm just humbled and grateful. And I mean it when I tell you I absolutely love the work that y'all are doing. Like, I think it is so needed, and I can see the authenticity. And so when everything that you guys are bringing into the work and encouraging and awareness and insight that you're bringing to people, I'm 100% supportive of it. And I'm thankful for this opportunity to spend time.
Oh, well, thank you,
Thank
Wes.
you.
And like Angus said, look forward to many more connections. And I definitely feel an in-person Atlanta vibe coming.
No, absolutely. No, it's been I felt like it's been a real privilege to
Yeah.
get to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just
Yeah.
going to stop the recording.